From Faithful Word Media, this is Healthcare Musings. I'm Dr. Hassaballa. Welcome everybody to Healthcare Musings. Happy to have you with me. So I'm going to begin this episode by commenting on what happened to the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. I have complained and railed against some of the tactics that commercial insurance companies do with respect to denials. I'm a physician advisor. I see it all the time. It's very frustrating. It's very annoying. There's no question about that. I mean, I have railed against it and I have complained and I have helped clinicians kind of be aware of what they do and how they deny and how to mitigate against them. And violence is never the answer. And I want to begin this episode because I still want to talk about it, about this. This is one of my, from the appeals desk episodes. I want to talk about the Coding Clinics article and how they use that to deny different diagnoses when they do DRG denials. And I want to begin with an unequivocal statement that violence is never the answer. Killing a husband and a father and a colleague and a fellow citizen and a human being is always wrong, full stop. There's no but, there's no and, there's no buts, there's no equivocation. Violence is wrong, killing another human being is wrong, full stop, period, that's it. It's wrong and it should never have happened, and that's not how we deal with this issue, is by violence, period, full stop. So as long as I said that, I want to kind of go in because I do a lot of DRG appeals, and they keep saying that according to the 2016 Coding Clinic article, a payer can use whatever specific criteria they can. That's not exactly true. They misquote the article, and the article says that the only one responsible for diagnosing the patient is the physician taking care of the patient, or the clinician taking care of the patient. Period. A payer is not responsible. It's the physician, and so they use that. So that's what it says, and I talked about it on a previous podcast episode. Now, they use this Coding Clinic article about sepsis in particular. They say, well, a payer, according to this article, a payer can use whatever criteria they can. They don't have sepsis because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or they don't have acute respiratory failure because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever. And so let me pull the article. I actually pulled the article. It's a 150-page article, and they go in the very last end of it, page 148, and they say, and they bring this out, and they misquote the article. But let me tell you about what they talk about specifically for sepsis. So this was in fourth quarter 2016, after the new sepsis criteria, Sepsis 3, came out. So this after Sepsis 3 came out, and this is what they said. I'm going to read it here. This is what they said. So they said, quote, while physicians may use a particular clinical definition or set of clinical criteria to establish a diagnosis, the code is based on his/her documentation, not on a particular clinical definition or criteria. In other words, regardless of whether a physician uses the new clinical criteria for sepsis, the old criteria, his personal clinical judgment, or something else to decide a patient has sepsis, and in parenthesis, and document it as such, the code for sepsis is the same, as long as sepsis is documented, regardless of how the diagnosis was arrived at. The code for sepsis can be assigned. Coders should not be disregarding physician documentation and deciding on their own, based on clinical criteria, abnormal test results, etc., whether or not a condition should be coded. For example, if the physician documents sepsis and the coder assigns the code for sepsis, and a clinical validation reviewer later disagrees with the physician's diagnosis, that is a clinical issue, but it's not a coding error. By the same token, coders shouldn't be coding sepsis in the absence of physician documentation because they believe the patient meets sepsis clinical criteria. A facility or payer may require that a physician use a particular clinical definition or set of criteria when establishing a diagnosis, but that is a clinical issue outside the coding system, unquote. So they're talking about that's a clinical issue, but what happens is these coding validation, it's not a clinical issue. They just say, we disagree with your diagnosis of sepsis because they didn't meet this particular criteria. That's not what this article is saying. This article is saying, if the physician thinks the patient has sepsis and codes it as documents it as sepsis, then it should be coded as sepsis. They come back later and they say, no, the coding was incorrect. The DRG is incorrect because they don't have sepsis. That's a different issue. And they can't use their own criteria. That's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for either a hospital to tell a doctor, we think this patient has sepsis, you should put it down. And it's not appropriate for a payer to say, we don't think this patient has sepsis, and so we're going to disallow this diagnosis and then downgrade the DRG and, hey, you owe us $10,000. Because that's what they're doing. They always go for the one thing that reduces the severity of illness, which then reduces the changes the DRG, and then they say we overpaid you and you owe us $5,000, right? No. And that behooves doctors when they're taking care of their patients to document, put it in the record why you think this patient has sepsis. Because all the time when we go back and review and ask, why did you do this? They give me this entire, screed about what they felt and how they looked at it, and that's fantastic. That's amazing. You didn't put it in the record, so I can't read your mind. You have to put it in the record so that I can support you. I want to support you. I'm a doctor like you are. I'm a clinician. I still see patients all the time, right? I'm working this week in the ICU at night, so I still see people, and I want to support you. You have to help me by putting down your brain, what's in your brain, putting it on paper so that I can justify and support you the care that you have. If you don't document it, then I can't read your mind. And so I just wanted to bring this up that they use this coding clinic, or the one that I just read from. They use it all the time to disallow sepsis. But even the clinical article says, doesn't matter what clinical criteria they're using, sepsis 2, sepsis 3, if they feel the patient has sepsis from their own experience and they document it as such, then the code for sepsis is appropriate, period. Anyway, thanks so much for your time and attention. Until next time, guys, we'll see you on Healthcare Musings. Thank you for watching. Sign up at healthcaremusings.com to get every episode delivered directly to your email. And please don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much.